The Overwatch 2 beta releases in roughly a month, giving you just enough time to prepare, but let's get right into it. Overwatch is at an all-time high right now with the promise of new content right around the corner. While it is exciting for many players, it can also be stressful. With Overwatch 2 dropping a tank from the lineup, a 5v5 environment will change the game drastically. So the key to success in Overwatch 2 is adaptation, and with a month until the beta, the sooner you practice now, the better prepared you will be for the success you want in the future. Simply practicing isn't going to be enough though. It is important that we prepare for Overwatch 2 and not just for Overwatch as we know it. Adaptation means we have to think outside the box. Currently, Overwatch is defined by the interaction between the main tank and off tank, creating and holding space in different ways depending on the character choices. With one tank gone, the synergy between those two tanks just don't exist, allowing for DPS to have a much larger impact on the game. Because of this, mechanics like aim, positioning, and movement are much more important compared to your overall understanding of the game and how your tanks set you up. That is not to say that this doesn't matter, just that there will be a shift in importance between all of these concepts. Now that we are on the same page, it is important that I explain the structure for the video. First, I will review some basic fundamentals that all players should brush up on before moving on to Overwatch 2. Then I will talk about what every role from main tank to main support should do in order to best prepare themselves for the shift Overwatch 2 will bring. So what I suggest is to first go over the general review section and then skip to your role to optimize your time. Timestamps will be provided in the description below. The loss of a tank is going to make a big difference for every single role. The tank will have to understand that they can't be as aggressive as they were before, DPS can carry harder as well as be more present within the game, and supports just simply won't be as safe. With this in mind, it is important that all roles go back to the FPS basics and hone their skills as much as possible. This means practicing aim, movement, and positioning around cover. Obviously, tanks won't have to worry about aim so much, but movement and positioning will be incredibly important to solidify. Tank players commonly take way too much damage via poor pathing and movement. They can get away with it at a lot of the lower ranks, but I believe this won't be true once Overwatch 2 comes to fruition. But let's get back on topic. Training aim will be important, but how should you go about it? Well, it depends. You have to look at your hero pool and understand how each weapon fires. What I mean by this is to understand if you are firing hit scan shots, meaning they hit exactly where the reticle is at on your screen, like Widowmaker, Soldier 76, and Cassidy, or projectiles that have travel time in the air, like Hanzo, Mei, and Zenyatta. Some characters fire both, like Ana, where her scoped-in shots are hit scan, but her hip-fire shots are projectiles. The reason why this is important to understand is that it will affect the way you train your aim on these characters. For hit scan characters, training using third-party softwares like Kovacs or Aim Labs is much more transferable because you don't have to learn the projectile time. For projectile heroes, using aim training software will help, but most of your time should be in Overwatch. Previously, I made a video experimenting with Kovacs to see how much aim trainers like these really helped me. In short, it definitely helped my aim and had some lasting effects. But you have to understand that I didn't just use Kovacs. Training in a third-party software just isn't enough. Training in Overwatch is just as important. I preach this code in so many of my videos, but using code VAXTA, V-A-X-T-A, for 30 minutes a day on hard mode will do wonders for your aim in just a month. Dedicate 1 or 2 heroes a session, turn on some music, just get at practicing. Aim is a skill that anyone can improve at. And to be honest, the hardest part for me is the consistency in training. But if you can find the discipline, you won't regret it when Overwatch 2 comes out. If you are interested in using the playlists that I use to train within Kovacs, join the Discord and DM me so I can get you some help to get it installed. The link to the Discord is in the description. Moving on, aim is only one variable in the FPS equation. Moving is just as important. To my surprise, movement isn't talked about a whole lot in Overwatch, even though it is incredibly important. Surefour has made some great videos in the past about how to strafe against different characters, and his videos will also be in the description. Let's touch up on movement though. First off, stop jumping. Jumping makes you an incredibly easy target, especially for snipers like Widowmaker, Hanzo, and Ashe. What jumping does is lock you into an extremely easy to read animation as opposed to staying on the ground with an unpredictable strafe pattern. Speaking of strafing, what if I told you that simply strafing isn't enough to maximize your lifetime? For example, you don't want to strafe so quickly that you barely even move, as well as strafe too long that you are essentially walking in a straight line. Your strafe pattern is directly dependent upon the character you are against, however. If you are against characters that generally flick to their targets, like Widowmaker, Cassidy, Zenyatta, or Hanzo, shorter strafes are generally better because it is harder to read and more pinpoint accuracy is required to hit shots on these characters. Against tracking characters like Symmetra, Zarya, Wrecking Ball, and Soldier 76, you want to use longer strafes. This is because if your strafes are too short, you run the risk of getting hit by the outside width of Zarya's beam, effectively getting killed by non-pinpoint aim that would otherwise make the damage avoidable. Don't feel the need to constantly move either though. Sometimes people just won't be looking at you. In these moments, it is okay to stand still and focus on hitting your shots instead of strafing and missing when there's nothing to avoid. Obviously don't stand still for too long, but many players don't utilize the time when they are given it. Movement is the easiest mechanic to abuse within Overwatch, which is also the reason why many players think the least about it. So look at your movement in these steps. First, break the habit of jumping constantly. Literally unbind your jump key if you need to in the month leading up to Overwatch. You will thank me later. Second, when you are aim training, think about the character you are against and adjust your strafe pattern. Remember short strafes for flicks and long strafes for tracking. Lastly, don't move when you don't have to. This is mostly an aim concept, but if no DPS are looking at you or you have a shield to utilize, it is okay to stand still for a brief moment to be more consistent with your shots. The last generalistic topic we will cover today is positioning. Positioning is generally in reference to where you are in accordance with your team, but we will take a different angle today, and that is utilizing natural cover to the best of your ability. Since the inception of Double Shield, players over time became more sloppy on this concept. After all, there is less of a need to use natural cover when a shield is protecting you anyway. In Overwatch 2, this won't apply, so it's important now more than ever to brush up on your positioning. I typically think about using cover as a rule of 180. This refers to your positioning in accordance with cover like a wall. If I'm standing in a completely open space, I am exposed to a full 360-degree circle surrounding my character as compared to a 180-degree half circle or lower if I'm playing next to a wall or multiple walls. Playing to a rule of 180 helped me open my eyes to learning better cover utilization, but it isn't necessarily the best for every single situation. In other words, you have to know what areas of the map are best, and this takes a lot of time to learn. What I'm getting at is that you want to make sure that you aren't overexposing yourself when you don't need to. Since you are going to be down a tank in Overwatch 2, you won't be able to get away with FPS mistakes like this. It is a simple fix, but not one that we think about a lot in the current build of Overwatch. It will make a big difference once Overwatch 2 comes out though, so make sure you brush up on it. Now that we discussed the fundamentals, we can now go into every single role and how to be prepared for when the beta drops. Main tanks should focus heavily on movement and pathing positioning, which we do discuss on other videos on the channel. Don't take routes to the fight that will lead you to take an excessive amount of damage. Instead, learn paths that minimize the poke you take. It will be very apparent in 5v5 when it comes out if you don't learn this early. Looking ahead, it is very difficult for me to tell you how your favorite tanks are going to change too. But if I were a betting man, I would suggest you start practicing Doomfist and other tanks you might not be comfortable with, especially D.Va and Ball. From my point of view, if Overwatch 2 is going to be DPS based, it will be important that you rush up on tanks that you aren't super confident with, especially those with high mobility. Moving on, off tanks, I feel for you. You probably aren't looking forward to Overwatch 2 as much as other people are, but there are still steps you can take to be prepared for the future. In my opinion, you have two choices, either to completely role swap or simply learn the main tanks. You have to commit to one or the other though as soon as possible. Learning all of the main tanks will be strenuous though, so if I were to recommend specific tanks, it would be Ball, Monkey, and maybe a slight amount of Doomfist. Depending on the path you take will dictate what fundamentals you practice. If you go the main tank route, pathing is more important to pay attention to, but if you pick the DPS route, you should almost strictly focus on all of the FPS fundamentals instead of learning the new tanks. By far, this role will take the longest and be the most difficult to adapt from, but you have roughly a month, which is ample time to put you ahead of the curve. DPS players I will group together just for the sake of time alone. As stated in the off-tank section, it is important that DPS go back to the fundamentals and make sure that they are consistent and solid. Winning duels is going to be a lot more about aim and movement than ever before. If you are a hit scan player, consider utilizing aim trainers like Kovacs. If you are a projectile player, make sure you stay consistent with your in-game practice, which goes for hit scans as well. Keep an eye out for Sojourn as well, as she could possibly be a crazy character since she apparently has a one-shot. Flexible players will also have a similar experience to DPS players in the sense that they should also heavily focus on the fundamentals with the time leading up to Overwatch 2. Damage is healing in Overwatch currently, and with one tank out of the picture, the amount of healing needed is going to be drastically reduced, making the need for aggressive damage higher than ever before. If you don't understand this concept, I will link a video in the description I've made in the past that will help you conceptualize the topic as it is pretty difficult to grasp. I am primarily a flex support player, and Kovacs helped me out a lot, don't get me wrong, but so did Vaxta, especially for characters like Ana and Zenyatta that I believe will be very strong when the beta comes. Make sure that you are practicing movement and dueling on these characters. You won't always have a diva to get you out of every single situation, so it is important that you rely on yourself to win your own battles with your mechanics. And lastly, main support players are much like main tanks in what they should focus on. Training movement on Lucio and advanced movement on Mercy and Brigitte will be crucial for your success in Overwatch 2. Super jumping is important to understand, but backwards jumping is also possible on Mercy. I would show you all how to do it, but I personally can't as it is incredibly difficult. There are videos for this tech that I recommend you watch as it can completely throw people off, letting you live for just a bit longer. Brigitte is similar, but not nearly as difficult. The most difficult character to brush up on though will be Lucio for Overwatch 2. Learning how to Reddit Lucio when it is appropriate will be what makes the character viable moving forward. A good Lucio duelist can carry games as is, and I believe that will be heightened in the future. Vaxta can help with improving on Lucio, but at the end of the day, free-for-all deathmatches may help more as you will be playing against actual players and ample terrain will be there for you to jump off of and practice your movement. And just like that, you have exactly what you need to prepare yourself for Overwatch 2. This massive update to what we currently have will drastically change the game in the future, and thus your skill set will have to adapt with it. I'm incredibly excited for what's next, and if you have any questions, let me know. But until next time, I gotta peace out and Paz out. I'll see you in the next one.